reflect on self as well, because you are a part of the system that is oppressing. We all are, in one way or another. And this book actually reveals that in a very sobering way, that will have you all start questioning your behavior online and why even you're a part of online. I say this as I stream out of YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, wherever. This is the irony, the big ha 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 the system has on us, right? So the book is written by the author Yanis Varoufakis. He's a globally respected economist and former Greek finance minister, known for challenging the global capitalist structure, especially after Greece's debt crisis. I'm not taking anything from Yanis Varoufakis, but I didn't know about him until I read the book, until I encountered the book. So this whole idea of Western entities claiming to be globally respected economists. Most people don't know you in Africa, sir. Not him, but just the way Western entities describe their own and their own organizations, when it's not factual. But you will know about him today. We will make sure that today he is globally known, at least, and then you decide whether you respect him or not, because he is touching on things that affect us as Africans that we need to be aware of. And it's this, we cannot, we need to be very keen about how we go about liberation. We cannot dismiss whiteness or the West or white people as a whole, despite the fact that we know who they are as far as our well-being. We know they're not our friends, but there are lessons that they have that we need to look into and use them for our own benefit. And this book is one such lesson. We've talked about John Perkins, a white man, but what he's talking about definitely needs to be known by our people and understood and critically analyzed. So the central thesis of this book is capitalism is not dying, it's already dead. That's the argument. And it's a letter to his father. His previous book was a letter to his daughter. So he's kind of talking to his father as you're reading the book. His father is passed on. Passed on before he actually published the book, I believe. So he's talking to his father's spirit. His father was very much of the understanding that capitalism is here to stay. And Yanis is arguing, not in a confrontational way, but in exchanging ideas and intellectual and let's learn from each other way, the fact that capitalism is dead, and that it has already been replaced by something worse, techno-feudalism. And when you read the book, you truly understand that it is something worse than what we had. And at one point he says, the weakness with us is we think that when we change, like we demand change without, this is now putting in my words, without fully being invested and intentional about what that change should look like, what that change must look like. So we just ask for change. And if we're not invested in how it should look like, then we risk the threat or the reality of the change being even worse than what we didn't want, which in this case, techno-feudalism is worse than capitalism. Techno-feudalism is controlling capitalism. Techno-feudalism has capitalism by its balls. Excuse my language for those of you who are very sensitive to that. Literally by its balls. And capitalism has no choice but to succumb to the power and control of techno-feudalism, because it caught it by surprise. It did not definitely see it coming. And the funny thing, based on the book's argument, is that capitalism helped fund techno-feudalism. Capitalism birthed techno-feudalism. So from our framing as African people, this is not just a Western issue. It isn't just a Western issue. This is now a global economic system. It is the new global economic system that deepens us Africans, WanaUbuntu, our dependency, extraction, and control over our lives, labor, and resources, right? This is colonialism and slavery on steroids, and we'll see why. I recommend the book. I will write it in the chat right now. The book is TECHNOFEUDALISM, what killed capitalism, and it's by Yanis Varoufakis. I hope I'm saying his name right. Yanis Varoufakis. It's on Audible. You have an audio of it. You have the hard copy for those of you who can access it. For those of you who cannot, I hope I do justice to covering the book today. There's so much. Like the last two chapters, or at least the second last chapter, I didn't even, as I was thinking, should I touch on it? Should I not? I was like, it's too much. And if I touch on that, it takes me away from what I want to focus on today. Because in that chapter, he talks about the dollar, how it comes into power, and how the US is controlling everyone based on the dollar, and then how China comes behind the US and does a 1, 2, 3 quick number on them, and all of a sudden is taking over, and the US is freaking out, right? All these bans you're seeing on China is the US freaking out because they woke up and in their arrogance of we are the best and we are the best thing since sliced bread, they woke up and found China sitting there on the throne as the boss, and they're like, oh shit, wait, is there a chance for us to hold on to this throne or what? And that's what they're doing now by banning the Chinese tech companies, because China is currently in control. China is controlling American people. China is controlling how we spend our money. And the US at this moment can do nothing about it because China put in the structures to make sure that this was not easily distractible by the US. And whether they knew it or not, they took away their dependency. And now the elite in China understand that they can be self-determined, self-dependent, and self-sufficient without worrying about the US punishing them. And if you read the book, there's much more detail about that will help you understand. So I couldn't add that to what I'm going to cover today because it's just so much. And maybe another day we'll just talk about that because I think that whole chapter is just an hour by itself. All right. So from capitalism to techno-feudalism, right? Defining capitalism. So he defines capitalism as markets, competition, investment, ownership of production, people gained through productivity. I also add a very important part of capitalism that we all must understand, which is why it needs to go, is exploitation. And definitely techno-feudalism, because we were not a part of bringing it on, holds on to that exploitative nature and therefore is not good either, and it must go. Techno-feudalism is platforms dominance, right? Google, Meta, Amazon, think about it, TikTok, all that. It is the dominance of platforms, not by producing. They don't give us tangible products, but by controlling the digital ecosystem. They control how we move, how we sell, our access, what we're looking at, what we like, how we think politically. They are literally the puppeteers controlling us. Power has shifted from capitalists who invest in production to cloudalists, those who control digital platforms, the Elon Musks of the world. And we are all dependent on these cloudalists for access to the cloud in order to interact, do business, or manage our personal affairs, and even run governments. That's my addition there. I think they are given the understanding, and my insight while I was working for the government is that they are controlling governments as well. Or at least the governments are dependent on them for functioning on a daily basis. So what impact does this have on Africa, right? African entrepreneurs can't truly compete globally because platforms like Google, Facebook own the space. They set the rules and they capture all the value. We keep talking about this in the liberation spaces, that we need a space of our own. We need a space. This is what's happening, right? We don't have full control of even pricing. We don't have full control. And the shift from producing value, capitalism, to merely extracting, and that, by the way, that's almost a false description of capitalism, but it is true somewhat. But capitalism's main goal is profit making through product manufacturing, right? I guess, and service provision. And so in that way, it is true. But and we are all dependent, means this shift from producing value to merely existing value via data means Africans who are online are unpaid laborers for big tech. We recently had a documentary on Kenyan people who work for big tech companies. I think it was Facebook who they were talking about, or Google, and they were underpaying them like ridiculous amounts of money, less than what they were providing for these people. And they were being put at risk because part of the work they're doing is to go and identify, because they think they were working for an AI company. AI is not intelligent in any way. AI's intelligence comes from our intelligence. AI is literally copying our intelligence and building a database. And maybe it might enhance that intelligence, but without our intelligence, there's no AI. So let's stop giving it the credit that it really doesn't deserve, because it is an electronic system that has taken from our minds. This is what techno-feudalism is about: our thoughts, our way of being, our history of written materials, our history of books written, our history of our activities online, and built a database of information that anyone can access. And so we have shifted from having products to this. And given the conversations I've been in with fellow Africans in certain spaces, this is true. Because they'll be talking to you about we need economic liberation, and they'll be like, oh, this is what we need to do. What do we need to do? We need to build a platform where we can sell services and where we can sell products. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Jumuiya. Mm-hmm. For those of you in Kenya, you know what Jumuiya is. Jumuiya is like an Amazon in Kenya. You go and order products, they're delivered to your house or to a location where you can pick them up. And so that's what now we are doing. We don't even go to the market anymore. We sit at our desks, as convenient as it may be, and order products. And now the people who are selling the products, yes, they make the money, but the biggest boss is the person who owns that platform where the people can go to sell their products, and us, the people, can go to buy the products. So, and then without access to that platform, whether you're the consumer or the producer of the services or the products that you're selling, your existence on that platform is at the mercy of the person who controls that platform. If you do not act accordingly, you're not going to get access, right? And we'll see other ways that they control that. So a lot of Africans are doing these, creating a lot of money for these big tech companies and getting very little, if anything, in return. And a lot of us are actually providing them a lot of money and access to data without getting anything in return. So there's no level of playing field, the end of market competition. There's no level of playing field. Platforms decide who sees what, who wins, and who gets blocked or banned. We saw that recently with African Stream. And then users are not consumers. They are the product being mined for behavior and data. Bigger than what you're buying online is what those online systems are able to get from your behavior, the way you think, the way you talk. Because don't forget, Siri is recording how you talk, right? And that's what means more to them, because through that, they can control what you buy, what you like, what you support, whether you're going to support Gaza or Israel. Yes, all that, whether you're going to support Ukraine or Russia, they can control that. And to them, that's much, much more powerful than what you're buying. The impact on us: local African tech platforms struggle or die because global platforms dominate data and ad revenue. I was recently on a platform where I used the word kill, and my comrade asked me not to use that word on the platform because, rightfully so, they're concerned that their platform will be shut down. So here we are. We can't even talk the way we should. We can't even describe what is necessary to describe as it should be described, because we were the owner of that platform, or the department that they have selected to do the scouting on what can and cannot be displayed there will take us off the platform. African youth with tech skills are often forced into low-paid platform gigs, unable to develop sovereign systems. These people are being paid sometimes less than $1 an hour to be on these platforms to do a lot of work that is generating a lot of money for these companies. So the new lords of the cloud, And we're not talking about the cloud that brings us rain or the clouds that gives us shade when we need it. We're talking about the cloud, the virtual existence of the internet. Data is rent now. They've become the new fifths, and we are the new serfs. Data is rent, and we are all on there taking up the space that they need us to take. And in order to access that space, we're either giving data, our information, or we are paying for it, right? Or we're bringing in people who are paying for it. Those of us who are doing YouTube, those of us who are content creators, we're bringing in a lot of views and data collection to these companies. So it's a win-win for them and a lose-lose for us, actually. The wins that we get from it are so insignificant compared to what they are getting in return. Your data, your location, your preferences, your voice, your face is extracted and monetized without your conscious participation and without compensation. You don't own your data, yet it fuels trillion-dollar companies. This is digital rent extraction. It is not free. It is not free. It is not free. Let me say that one more time. It is not free. So the fact that you can get on Google and you think, oh, it was free to join. It's not free. And I've said several times, oh, it's free to subscribe to Kumbukeni. It's not free. At least the money is not going to me. To me, it's free. But YouTube is cashing in, and YouTube is connected to Google, and they're collecting your data. They're collecting everything I say today, they will be collecting and using, and probably against us, right? So what impact does this have on Africans? African countries supply data to TikTok, through WhatsApp, through Instagram, yes, through WhatsApp. A lot of us are very active on WhatsApp, and etc., but earn nothing from it. Digital colonialism. Western companies extract African digital labor the same way raw materials were looted under colonialism. A lot of Africans are online for free. Platform as fiefdom. So these platforms are the new fiefdoms, right? Like medieval fiefdoms, platforms rule over the serfs. We're the serfs. Those who rely on YouTube, Etsy, TikTok to survive, right? I remember recently, I mean, not too long ago, most of you remember, Americans were freaking out. American content providers were freaking out. And American, yeah, because that's where TikTok was going to be banned. And a lot of them are making some good money on TikTok. And so if it's banned in America, they cannot continue to make money from it. That is literally how much control these systems have on you. And then the rules are imposed without negotiation. No one talks to us about what should be the rules of Facebook, of Google, of YouTube. No, they make them and we follow them, whether we like it or not. Algorithms change. Your livelihood vanishes. Just like that, African Stream has no longer has access to YouTube. Just like that, all the videos you've created for however long you've been a content provider, poof, if you did not save them. And all the money and following that you had that was generating income, poof, gone, just like that. What impact does this have on Africans, African creators? And if you want to know what the book cover looks like, the thumbnail I have on the Kumbukeni broadcast today has the book cover and the author's name. I may be able to upload it and show it towards the end. If someone can remind me, I'll do that. And again, please feel free to ask questions. Any questions, I'll look at them. I will answer them. I may choose not to answer them, depending on how you show up, right? And whether it's helping build Africans, it's helping build the well-being of Africans or not. That actually is more the driving reason whether I answer your question or not, because you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the trolls who come to throw us off track. So African creators and small businesses are platform dependent. That's where most people now are making money. Most people are leaving their jobs to do this. Most people are fired from their jobs, and then this is what they end up doing. And in Africa, the money that you get is big money. For us, it's insignificant. at least the amounts that I'm getting right now, but back at home, that's big change per month. We can pay for an apartment per month back at home. So that's good money. If they're being paid at the same rate that we are, I don't know if that changes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does. So, and we are at risk of demonetization or deplatforming. There's no legal recourse. You cannot go, there's not a court you can go to argue. The court is the court of the people, and that now does not have power because the people are not rising. It has power, but it's unrecognized power by the people. So it might as well be useless. And so the economy futures are determined by distant tech lords in Silicon Valley. Elon Musk is determining the economic future of many, many, many of us. Mark Zuckerberg is determining the economic future of many, many, many of us, and the many other few cloud fiefs that we have running the world currently. And if you ever needed convincing, just look at the US currently and tell me who in the last few months has been controlling the American government, right? Who has been in the forefront of controlling the American government in the last few months. And that's when you'll realize where power is actually lying today. The impact on Africans, no, we're talking about cloud capital. So cloud is no longer physical. Power lies in owning digital infrastructure and networks. Those are the people who now have power. Cloud capital, the ownership of code, networks, algorithms, is the new source of power and wealth. Whoever controls the clouds, the servers, the software, the algorithms, controls global wealth. And so Elon Musk currently is in control of a big chunk of global wealth. What impact does this have on us again, Africans? This is where we are centering everything. African rents foreign cloud services like Google Cloud, AWS, Microsoft Azure, massive revenue outflows. These platforms have. And then governments that store public data on foreign servers surrender digital sovereignty. Like, here's the thing that many people don't like to hear, and many people have gotten into back and forths with me about. And it's not because I want to be right. No, that's not why. It is because, given my understanding and analysis that is also inspired by other people's understanding and analysis, other people who are much more knowledgeable than me on these subjects, for us to be liberated, we're going to have to abandon some major things in our lives that we're dependent on right now, because they are the reason why we cannot achieve liberation. So if you, being a part of the cloud as a government, an African government, storing your data in that cloud, storing your finances, storing your movement, your military agenda and plans and strategies, storing your names, your emails, your birthdays, your government, members of your government, their birthdays, their locations, all of that. And then the people, their locations, everything, what they're doing, their businesses and all that. If that is us surrendering digital sovereignty and physical sovereignty, then how can we be liberated as long as we're in those spaces? So in order to truly be liberated, the big chunk, the most important chunk of the liberation movement has to be done outside of digital spaces. It has to be. And that includes the economy, African spirituality, like the center, the core that we don't want anyone else to have access to, the core that will be our, what do they call it? I forget what they call it, but I'll call it national security for now. The core of what we're doing that will, if accessed, will threaten our national security, our well-being, that must be outside of digital spaces. Because if we're not in control of digital spaces and these people can see everything we're doing online, anything we do online, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you think that platform is safe or not unsafe, they have access to. And therefore, we are not liberated as long as we're moving online. And given that our economy is dependent on the online platforms, like you're selling and all that, whatever we choose to move on economically must be outside of those platforms. A friend said to me recently, if we're paying rents at the amounts where we're paying, we're forced to make monies whichever way we are, that we'll be able to pay that rent, right? And I get that. 100% I get that. And it's the truth. But I want liberation. I don't want to continue being a part of a system that continues to exploit us, because that exploitation is what I am 100% against. That exploitation is what seems to many who interact with me, that makes me seem unreasonable and uncompromising and stubborn, because I'm not going to compromise on the eradication of exploitation. I'm not going to, with anyone. Whatever we come up with must not have that aspect of exploitation, and anything that does has to go. And so I am insisting on every way that I can to come out of it, including maybe moving out of this space where I need to pay expensive rents. And I envy people who are now going back to nature and living in a very minimal way, where they don't need to be a part of the exploitative system, that they can survive. They can have food, they can have shelter, they can have water, which is part of food. They can have peace without being in the system as much as we are, without relying on expensive rents as much as we are, right? So I'm ready. Right now, if I had the opportunity to peacefully go to a space and just have a small shelter that's enough for me and my family, be able to make my own food, to grow my own food, be able to move freely, and just meet my basic needs, I would go there right now and get away from this exploitative system. I would get away from digital sovereign, like that digital access. I would, because my basic needs are met. And then I would start working locally to do the work that I do on YouTube now. I would, because me being here is giving control to these criminals. Me being here is building data for them. Us being online is building data for them. And we are willingly succumbing to our enslavement. Yeah, this one took me down. You know how we say that our journey as revolutionaries, African people, is milima na mabonde, right? Hills and valleys. I am in the mabonde right now. I am in a valley with reckoning with this book and the many books I've been reading recently. And I'm not going to say, oh, Ndiko, put down those, that has been said to me. I'm not going to accept that, put down those books and just focus on life now. No, because putting down those books means I'm operating blindly, while what I'm being warned about in the books is continuing to grow and have control and power. So I'm not putting down the books. I'm using them and figuring out how to use the knowledge there to save me and my people, if I can. So the control and surveillance, this is the biggest one. You all know this one. We all know this one. Maybe some of us are just ignorant and we don't know. Maybe, you know what? Maybe. That we don't realize that when we have, what's her name in our homes? The one that you ask to turn on the music. Gosh, I forget her name. Not Siri, the other one. I forget her name. The digital her, right? That when you have that in your home, everything you do in your home, including your snoring, your sleep patterns, everything is recorded. And then that data is sent to the I'll call it a piggy bank of data, right? That these people control and access and have lots of people working to see what's going on, right? So They don't even have to come to our nations anymore and sit with us and write books about us and study us. We are literally giving them all that information online right now, knowingly and unknowingly. So the surveillance capitalism goes deeper. Varoufakis goes beyond Zuboff. It's not just surveillance, it's total control of the economic ecosystem. Every digital interaction feeds into a system that shapes behavior and predicts desires. You all are controlled as to whether you're going to be pissed off about something or you're going to support it and cheer it. And a lot of you, yes, I'm going to say you, I'm not going to be a part of you anymore. I'm sorry. I'm checking out because I'm working very hard not to be a part of you. I'm sorry. No more we when it comes to stuff like that. You all are watching videos, and these videos have been tailored to bring a certain emotion out of you all, and you give it. You don't even stop to think, you just give it. You don't even stop to think, how is that going to impact me and my people? You just give it. Right? You have a revolutionary, you know what? Traore. All the videos that are coming out of him, on him, like you don't even know who's behind it. Right now, we know China is controlling the biggest chunk of cloud rent. China, yes. We don't know what goals they have as far as controlling us and how they need us to move. And so, and there's a part I had written a note in the book. Let me see if I can get it. And I hope in my moving all over the place with presenting this, you're getting something. I understand that I am not too focused on how I'm presenting this, and that's okay. I'm not going to give myself a hard time about it because it's overwhelming. What I consumed is very overwhelming. There's a part, what does he say? You know what? For those of you who follow me, I'll post it. When I see it, I'll post it in my in the spaces where I am in. I'll post it as one of my regular posts. So look out for that. Every digital interaction feeds into a system that shapes behavior and predicts desires. That you need to know that. So take a minute to stop and think when you're reacting to something online. Would this be my regular reaction, or am I moving logically? Does it make sense that I'm reacting this way? Is what is being told true? Who's saying it? How do they benefit? What if it was China putting it out? What would be their goal? What if it was the United States putting it? That's the second largest cloud thief. What if it was them putting it up? What would they gain? What do they want? How would me reacting this way benefit them? And then figure out how you can react differently for the well-being, being grounded in the well-being of WanaUbuntu Afrikans. That should always be our grounding. That is the grounding that will make you realize that you have to move away from the luxuries that you have. Honestly, that's the sobering grounding. This thing that I'm choosing to do, is it for the well-being of our people? It's not. I need to stop doing it. I need to start working towards stopping doing it. I can't be a part of this if I want liberation for my people. The impact on Africans, African populations are being psychologically shaped by foreign ideologies. African populations are being psychologically shaped by foreign ideologies. This is why now in Kenya, you have walk-in closets. This is why all over our continent now, you have twerking. This is why all over our continent now, you have bling, 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 and N-word this and N-word that. Because this is what you're seeing online, so it's cool. And you're just following it. Right? Kendrick Lamar's video. Great video performance at the Super Bowl. Great performance. It was great. But I think it controlled us way too much. We succumbed to it controlling us way too much. At one point, I got pissed off. Like, you couldn't turn on anything and not see you hear the tune right now, it's like triggering to me, because I'm like, how stupid are we that for the gazillionth week we are still holding on to this song as if there are no other songs. Like, for us to dwell on one thing as a people for months because the internet says it's the hottest thing since sliced bread is ridiculous, y'all. And this is how they're controlling us. For us to hold on to Kendrick Lamar's song for as long as we did, and doing dances for it for as long as we did, while Congo is being bombed, while Gaza continues to be bombed, while we're losing access to our food sovereignty, is ridiculous. But this is what they're doing. This is what they have us focus on instead of what we need to focus on. Now I'm hearing apparently the latest thing is us focusing on some southern, black southern dance with fans. And this is what they do. So Black youth across the diaspora are targeted by addictive, harmful algorithms promoting self-hate, overconsumption, and political apathy. Black youth across the diaspora, and I would say across the globe, because this is not just the diaspora, are targeted by addictive meaning you can't put it down. You have, that's all you're watching. I'm working in the education space right now. I'm telling you, and I usually sit in the back of the classroom. These students, while the teacher is teaching, are watching video games, are on YouTube while the teacher is teaching in a chemistry class. And then tests will come and they're like, I'm explaining to them how to do something, How do you do that again? What's that? Oh, yeah. Clearly, you don't know what that is, because while you were being told what that is, you were watching some video. And so recently I said to a young man, close your computer, because I actually care about this young man. He's one of us. He's a WanaUbuntu, and I want to see him do well. And so because sometimes you have to detach, because you get so attached and it consumes you. But I took the extra sacrifice of just saying, okay, let me give to this young man, because I really want to see him do, because I'm human also, right? I said to him, put down your computer, close it, because he tried to like disconnect in one way. I said, no, close the screen. And so he closed it and wasn't looking at any electronics and started listening to the teacher. This young man was answering every question that the teacher was asking. It's a biology class, was understanding and was getting it right. We were talking about genetics and blood types and all that now. And that's all it took. Close the computer. The phone was taken by the teacher, and this man was on it. This young man was on it. Before that, what's that? What? This is where we are. And so, if we're talking about liberation, we truly must understand, and this is not about me wanting to be right. This is facts that we need to actually reckon with, as uncomfortable as they are, that to be liberated, we're going to need to stop being dependent on these gadgets. We're going to need to take away the gadgets once in a while and actually interact and actually be present. We're going to have to. That's what liberation will require, true liberation. So algorithms as governance. Algorithms replace, let me see where we are. Okay, I'm doing good. Algorithms replace laws and policies. Uber decides the prices and wages. And then I worked for Uber for a bit when I was looking for something to do. I stopped working for Uber because I was spending more. Given where I'm located, I couldn't see who's requesting a ride. And if I reject the ride, if I reject too many rides, I lose points as a driver. If I lose points, I lose access to the customers. This is how much we're controlled. And so many times I would answer the request for a ride and it's going into the city, New York City. I have to go through the tunnel and pay that, right? And so I remember one weekend I was working all weekends and I was working until late at night. And I ended up spending more on tolls than I earned that weekend. And you're sitting so much in your car that your back, at least for me, my back was hurting. I said, okay, Uber, you know what? You're not good for me right now. I need the money, but this is not worth it. I had to leave Uber. Uber decides the prices and the wages. They decide how much we're charged. And then from that, how much they're going to give to the drivers. Facebook decides what you see, who gets censored. Amazon decides what you buy, the product visibility. And here I am wondering, why has the book, the WanaUbuntu is the organization that I'm a part of, WanaUbuntu book, Kwanza book, Ubuntu book, Kiswahili Kwanza book, why is it not selling at all? Not even one copy. Amazon decides who buys what you buy, the product visibility. It does. The new governance is opaque, undemocratic, and controlled by a handful of unelected technocrats. Elon Musk. I mean, the US is the perfect example for this whole situation. Elon Musk is running the government. Is he elected? Did you choose him? No. Is he running the government? Did he get a lot of federal employees fired? Hell yeah. Is he affecting a lot of policy right now in the United States? Hell yes. And one of these days, maybe tomorrow or later today, I'll see whether I have some time. I'm going to do a recording of something that I think you all need to hear. It is something that's available, but because of how cookies are controlled and how a lot of us are ignorant about what spaces we should be and what we should be watching, what we should be looking at, a lot of you I know do not have access to this information. Right? That is very critical, especially if you're living within the United States as a WanaUbuntu, as an African. So I'll put out a video on that. I hope more people put out a video on that so that it can be widely spread. So feel free, once I put out the video on it, to also replicate and put out videos. Share. I'll share the link. You share the link. Let every single Black person in the United States and outside the United States have access to that information. This is not about, I need to be the only platform that has it so that I can have the most subscriptions so that I can make the most money. No, this is about liberation. And if we understand that our movement online is being controlled, then we must find a way to break that beyond making money for ourselves as individuals. The decisions are made without transparency, accountability, or the opportunity to appeal them. We cannot appeal any decisions made on these platforms. There are no laws right now allowing us to. And even if there were laws right now, based on the arguments that Yanis Varoufakis makes in this book, Technofeudalism, What Killed Capitalism, these companies that are dependent on the cloud rent don't want the cloud rent to go, because that's how they access us. They have no incentive to fight them. They have no incentive to put up policies that are going to put these people in check. Because right now they're making big cash. Even if they're not in control of them, even if the cloud fiefs are the ones in control, they have access and they have resources to have access and maintain. And they can play the game of saying the right words and playing nice, because they're not unliberated. Like, white people are not enslaved right now. So they can move freely, the companies that they run. They can move freely in these spaces. They have no incentive to break down this system. And so they have no incentive to put up policies that do that. And so we are on our own. We, the exploited people, we, the oppressed people, are on our own. The impact on Africa, African elections, protests, like, you think you're operating like African elections, protests, and resistance movements are increasingly mediated and undermined by algorithmic control. So if you think you're in a democratic situation where you're running your own ish, please wake up. Let me brew the coffee for you. Oh, done. Smell it right now and wake up. No, we're not liberated. And in fact, we're sinking into a more enslaved status now with technofeudalism and with cloud rent and with cloud power and fiefs. Political sovereignty is compromised as Western platforms shadow ban African voices critical of neocolonialism or exploitation. Let's look at that, Mabona, in a few minutes. I like that question because and this is the thing, these questions help us think differently, and something that may have been in my subconscious, your question might trigger it. Or even if I don't have the answer, you may help us. If we think collectively, if we ask collectively, we may come up with the answers that we need to come up, because we need to come up with answers. I, for one, I don't care if you all join me. It would be very nice if you all join me. But I, for one, I'm not accepting this techno-feudalism. No, I'm not going to go along to get along. No. I will go be in the woods somewhere, like completely remote by myself, living in a very, very remote way before I accept this. Impacts on society, decline of labor power. We used to have power. Workers have little bargaining power. Gig economy workers are unpaid, overworked, and easily replaced by ratings or AI. I do YouTube and these broadcasts because I care about my people. If I was doing them for compensation, I would not be doing them still to the, like, we started in 2023, January. I would have been done. If I was doing them solely for compensation, I would have been, this is not a sound business concept at the moment. It's not making money. In the last 4 months, we just hit a couple of weeks ago, the $100 requirement for YouTube to pay us. We just hit that. In 4 months, Kumbukeni just hit $100. 4 months. All the work that we do every week. 4 months, $100. Thank you all. $100. Give me a minute. Even middle-class professions are being reshaped by digital platforms and automation. Like the sad thing, I'm sorry, my tears and frustration is realizing the truth of how enslaved we really are. How fucked, for lack of a better word. Actually, no, I have better words because I just used one, because I choose to use this word, how screwed over, fucked we are. And how we have very little options right now, because, especially because we're not moving together as one. Especially because we're not willing to let go of these luxuries. Seem like luxuries, but they're truly exploiting us. That's very frustrating. When I get frustrated, I get emotional to the point of tears. So this is why. Even middle-class professions are being reshaped by digital platforms and automation. Traditional unions, labor laws, and job protections don't apply. Who is going to start a YouTube union? And what's that going to look like? And where will it be recognized? Can we do that? That's a question out to you all. Can we start a YouTube union to protect YouTube content providers? And then you have the content providers who are representing Africa, and the content providers who are representing twerking, and the content providers who are representing the latest shooting and making money out of that, and the content providers who are representing Taylor Swift, and the content providers who are representing the biggest walk-in closet. How do those content providers come together to create a union when they are completely contradicting themselves in policy, like and principles? How then do they come together to build a union that defends them? What does that look like? What policies do they build for that union to protect them? Right? Because the thing that me as an African content provider I'm standing for goes against the thing that the person who's talking about a walk-in closet does. And therefore So Africans, how does this impact us? Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora, are overrepresented in gig work. This is what most people are doing: Uber, food delivery, freelance services without benefits of rights. Like a lot of Africans were unemployed, and how they got out of that is by doing this stuff that now they're dependent on cloud. Most people are content providing on whatever they are. It doesn't matter whether it makes sense or doesn't, they're doing it. And now under the control of these cloud thieves. Democracy and the illusion of choice. Politicians no longer regulate tech. They can't, they're dependent on it. Tech is controlling them. When you sit down and ask yourself, this country, United States, that claims to be so powerful, this country, the United States, that has never succumbed to any outside interference, Elon Musk, is now being controlled by Elon Musk. How did this happen? Slap me and help me wake up. Am I in the upside down world? So he has the politicians by their balls again. The language is necessary because this is ridiculous. So by their throats, should we do that? So that you are by their throats, let's do that. I'm sure even that someone will be offended by it. Politicians no longer regulate tech. They depend on it for surveillance. That's another thing. They need it for surveillance, propaganda, and campaign tools. So it's benefiting them. They have no incentive, like I said before, to regulate tech. Real power is even these fake. The only reason the US government is fighting Chinese tech is because they realize China is about to take over as a hegemony and they're about to be put in a backseat. That's the only reason. It's the only reason. Not because of the well-being of humanity. It is because the United States is in a position right now at a big risk of losing power globally. And China is setting itself up to take over, if they haven't already taken over, based on the book. Real power is held by cloudalists, not elected leaders, cloudalists. The people who own the cloud have the real power. Democratic institutions are hollowed out, unable to regulate or even understand these new structures. Impact on Africans. African governments become dependent on foreign platforms for governance tools, communication, and surveillance. I wonder what Burkina Faso is using. I'm almost certain it's either Chinese or Russian. And I want it to work out in Burkina Faso. I truly do. But when you understand what we're being told, Burkina Faso is not free. And right now, they're only surviving in their self-determination because whoever they're partnering with has something to gain through that partnership. If that thing that they have to gain goes, logic tells us that Burkina Faso will not have that support anymore. Right? So how does Burkina Faso position itself in a situation where it can stand alone, whether it does what others like or not? That's the question. How do we all put ourselves in that position? Diaspora organizing is under threat as social media algorithms suppress radical Pan-African ideas and boost imperialist narratives. Sometimes I stay so long before I see some of my comrades' platforms, I have to intentionally, between waking up, taking care of the kids, going to work, doing all the things that I need to do, I have to be oh, I haven't been to so-and-so's platform. Let me see what they're doing, right? Let me support them. Let me go. Because it doesn't come always, despite the fact that I've even clicked the bells. I'm not always alerted when they're on live. I have to actually go to the channel. There's several channels. We Charge Colonialism, Kimbunga, where I have the bell selected so that I can get alerts. I don't get alerts. I have to go in and see whether they're live and what their latest broadcasts are. Reclaiming control. We're getting now to the area of solutions, 1259. Reclaiming control. Varoufakis, Yanis, the author, argues that we must reclaim the digital commons. And by the way, he wrote this book after the Greece financial crisis. If you all remember it, maybe now it's 10 years since it happened. I don't remember how long ago. Like life is moving so fast now. Not too long ago, probably in the same decade, maybe the last decade, Greece had a horrible financial crisis, and I don't even know how much their currency is valued at. I don't even know if they have a currency, given how much it was destroyed, its value, or undermined. So he wrote this book after that, was inspired to write this book by that, or inspired to do the work that he's doing, Yanis Varoufakis, after that, allegedly. He may have another reason if we speak to him. And hopefully we will get to speak to him. I have sent an invitation to him. I would like to ask him certain questions. I would like to get clarity on certain observations. So if you can help us get access to him, that would be nice for us to bring him and have that conversation so that we can have a better understanding of these observations and how we can move. He argues that we must reclaim the digital commons. Communities must demand control over our own data, content, and algorithms. Even the current Black spaces, right? The spaces that claim to be Black, even all of them. Okay, one probably not, but even that one, the servers are serviced by someone else. All of them, the servers are not owned by them. The servers are owned by the cloud thieves. So are they really Black spaces? How do they protect the data there from getting to the cloud thieves? This is me, and like we literally have to ask these questions, whether they make us uncomfortable or not, whether they make us popular or not, whether they make us seem Black enough or not. They're the questions we must ask. Platforms should be treated as public utilities or cooperatives, not private empires. That's the thing. We need to move from Elon Musk owning Twitter to a conglomerate of people owning Twitter. And for us, it should be something else. We Africans come together and this collective owns this. And everything that is done on that platform is centered on the well-being of WanaUbuntu. Actions for us that he suggests: push for African-owned digital platforms, or at least what I got from what I was reading. Push for African-owned digital platforms governed by Ubuntu values. That's what I was talking about. And Ubuntu, if you remember, I've said several times, it is not just about kumbaya. Ubuntu is also about defending the community, which means that at some point, you might have to do things that don't seem nice to defend your community. Demand local hosting, data protection laws, and digital commons initiatives. We don't have the power to do that, but that's something we can do when we get to a position where we can do that. Proposals for democratic cloud control. Algorithms should be transparent and collectively governed. Who's going to do that? He told us already that the challenge is we cannot, we have no influence on policies. So how are we going to do that? But this is something we need to sit with. Like, I'm asking these questions so that we can start thinking, so that they can trigger thought and ideas. We need to build cooperative-owned platforms that serve the people, not exploit them. Again, for me, when you talk to me, anyone who interacts with me, and I seem stubborn to you, is because what you're proposing, I'm seeing exploitation in it. It's not because I'm being stubborn. I like to be right. I think I know everything. No, it's because I see exploitation in what you're proposing. So for me, the thing I will not compromise on is exploitation of our people. I will not compromise on that at all. So, action for Africans. Build Swahili-based, Ubuntu-based search engines, Pan-African media networks, and ethical digital currencies. That's why you should support all Pan-African networks. And if you are tech savvy and have a way we can, because China did it. And you know what, by the way, he mentions, and that's what I was looking for. That's what I was looking for. And I wish I could get the quote, and I'll look again before we finish. Remind me to look again before we finish. Because I tagged it as one of my bookmarks as I was listening to the audio. Is that the one thing that enabled China to build this cloud fiefdom that is now threatening US cloud fiefdom is that they don't have a US base in China, as opposed to Japan, right? During the dollar control. Let me see whether I can find it. Now that I remember where exactly it is, I might be able to find it and read the quote. It's... Yeah. This part of it is quotes from the book, but also my words. So, but listen to it. China's strength. So I paraphrase, right? Being outside of America's defense umbrella, its soil free of giant US army bases like the one in Okinawa. So he's making this point showing why, comparing why China was able not to be hit by the bullying that the US used to destroy the yen, the Japanese yen back in the day. China has no US base, and therefore they're not dependent or victim to any America defense umbrella. They're not connected in any way. So they could do this. They could say, Fanguo, F you, America. We really don't give a shit what you're saying right now. We're going to be who we are and we're going to do what we want to do. Because they had no threat in their country. They had no base in their country. And this is what we say all the time. Africans, the first thing, listen, let's even stop talking about the first thing. We need to do multiple things at the same time. And one of them is get rid of the US bases, get rid of all the foreign bases on our soil. We will not be able to do anything liberation-wise as long as those bases are on our soils. And this is what China has as a strength. This is what makes the difference between China taking over and everyone else still being dependent on the US. So Beijing being outside of America's defense umbrella, its soil, China's soil, free of giant US army bases like the one in Okinawa, Beijing felt none of the need to defer to Washington that Tokyo revealed in 1985. Crucially, China also had its own big tech to bolster its position, especially its impressive cloud finance capabilities. And surprisingly, faced with Trump's aggressive move, this is now fast forward to Trump, China banning their tech platforms, China held its own within the dark deal and continued to recycle Chinese profits into American assets. Not only did Beijing not succumb to pressure to revalue the yuan, their currency, as Japan had ruinously agreed to do with the yen, its big tech conglomerates like Huawei and ZTE licked their significant wounds. Okay, we were wounded, and set about creating their own operating system and platform software. Despite the great cost, because a lot of you keep talking about we can't do that, it costs a lot, instead of figuring how we can get the cost, the money to fund it, these people were able to lick their wounds. They knew they were going to get hurt, but they knew, guess what? Let me finish. They licked their significant wounds and set about creating their own operating system and platform software. Despite the great cost involved, China's rulers understood that their future relied on not handing over their cloud capital and, of course, their cloud finance to America. They understood that. We cannot be tied in any way to America. That's where our strength is. And as painful as it is going to be to detach and do our own thing, we have to, because our future relies on it. They understood that. And so, well into Biden's first year in the White House, the dark deals between Chinese capitalists and America's rentiers limped on. It was done. China was like, sayonara. So it's a great book. Read it. It's very informative. It's not going to be a pleasant whoop-de-doo, I'm reading this experience. It's going to be a painful experience because it reveals a lot of truths. It makes you realize that we're truly, truly enslaved, not in the way our ancestors were. We're not being, like, I'm not getting lashes on my skin. I'm not being raped, not physically, not sexually. My name, I'm not being forced to change my name, although in some situations, some people cannot even use their names online because if you use your name, the algorithms are, hi, again. But it's not in such a violent, immediate physical violence way as it was before, but it's still enslavement, and maybe the worst kind, because this one is not, it doesn't have an easy way of getting out of. I'm certain there's a way because this is how life works, but it's not easy. And we definitely will not get to it if we're not willing to be uncomfortable to get to it. What does digital sovereignty look like? True independence today means control over data, platforms, and code. Without this, Africa is not free, right? And I say there, I put a note, this reminds me of the times when I've gotten frustrated when someone says it depends on what your definition of liberation is. Like I get pissed off when say we have different definitions of liberation. I'm like, what? Isn't liberation just us freeing ourselves? Like it should be one definition. But then I'm like, yes, there's one definition, but there are many ways that we need to be very specific about what it is we need to, the backstops that we need to put in place to ensure that we get the liberation. And so this is digital liberation that we need to have, that we don't have. And so that's a different type of liberation than physical liberation. It's a different type of liberation than I can move freely, I can wear my hair freely, I can speak my language freely. The control of cloud, to be cloud thieves, we wouldn't be thieves because we're not oppressing someone, but to be owners of cloud and control our own cloud like China does now and has gained power despite what the US is doing, is going to, is different than the way we've described liberation before. The way those who fought for the civil rights movement never even thought they would have to think about. So it does need to be looked at in these different ways it represents itself, liberation. And then technological sovereignty is key to economic and political liberation. If I have to tell you that, well, let me take my patience and give grace. We need to have technological sovereignty in order to have economic, in order to have political, in order to have spiritual liberation. Because as long as we are under their clouds, in their spaces, on their platforms, we have no liberation. And then demand national digital infrastructures. We can't demand them if our leaders are not even in tune with what needs to be done. And the book, and I've written many other notes, maybe I'll do a piece that shows how our leaders are part of the problem. Yeah, so maybe I'll do that. But you all know our leaders are part of the problem. So they don't even have an incentive to listen to what we're saying about organizing digitally and building our own platforms or funding those platforms. Because when you go to the chapter where he's talking about the dollar, you realize how truly fucked African nations are, or they were, when the dollar, when Nixon decided to abandon gold as the backer for the dollar, and now it was just paper money that was dependent on just the superficial value of paper money. And the global economic was controlled by the dollar. You as an African had to buy goods with the dollar. The things you buy for your production have to be bought by dollars. And so if you have, and guess where you're getting the dollar? From Wall Street, from the US. That's where you get the money. That's where you buy the money. You're not producing it. So you have to get it from the US, and the US can decide not to give it to you. For example, and when they come, they decide to give it to you, there are conditionalities. That's where the IMF comes in. I'm going to look at another thing here that I'm going to read so that you can hear that, how that happens. For those of you who are always fighting me when I say the IMF must go, the World Bank must go. Organize digitally, but also build offline alternatives. We must build offline alternatives. Support African-centered media platforms and radical education about digital colonialism. Support public digital infrastructure and ethical tech alternatives. Join hands, unite across the diaspora to reclaim our data, our labor, our future. Again, the Chinese, the way they were able to get the position of power that they have right now, they have no US bases on their land, on their soil, none. And then they were able to be okay with understanding that the US had gotten them, and it was painful, and it would take a lot of discomfort to build, but they knew they had to do that. They were okay with doing that because the thing they weren't going to let themselves be is under control of the US government as far as access to the cloud. Okay, so I hope this helped you. I'm going to now look at the questions, but also I'm going to look for that quote to read it. Oh, yeah, about the dollar. So I read about China. Um, yeah, so let me read this. It's in the middle of, so it might not sound like it has context, but hopefully it gives you some information. Deficit countries in Africa with weak economies constantly agonizing over a shortage of dollars, which they had to borrow from Wall Street to import medicines. And like, seriously, y'all, the medicine we need in Africa. And you wonder why these hospitals are not stocked with medicine. Like when you understand that Ruto must go is such a juvenile concept, which is why I stopped joining you all on the platforms and being in those gatherings, because I was like, Kenyans are not hearing me. And again, this is how you all see it. Nduko thinks she's a know-it-all. Nduko doesn't want to hear. Nduko wants us to do what she wants. No, I'm just one person amongst many who's telling you that Ruto must go is not the solution. It is so like insignificant compared to what is actually controlling you. It's laughable. And I'm certain these white criminals are laughing as they hear you talk about Ruto must go and dying for it. Let me settle the emotion and go back to the quote. Deficit countries in Africa with weak economies constantly agonizing over a shortage of dollars, which they had to borrow from Wall Street to import medicines, energy, and the raw materials necessary to produce their own exports, which they needed to earn the requisite dollars to repay Wall Street. Inevitably, every now and then, they run out. At that point, because they're not manufacturing the money, they have to get it. So they run out. At that point, the West would send in the bailiffs, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, which then lends the missing dollars on condition that the debtor government hands over the country's water, land, ports, airports, electricity, and telephone networks, even its schools and hospitals to the local and international oligarchs. To the local and international oligarchs. Don't think that your leaders are not incentivized to make sure that you're screwed over because they're getting something in return. And they have no incentive to stand by you or what you want. In fact, they'll take you down because you're risking their chance to be a part of this system and get some money and get some name for themselves. So that was the colonial aspect. That is the colonial aspect of the same global recycling mechanism which secured US hegemony, or the Minotaur's reign. Then came the crash of 2008. This had two main effects that together underpinned today's new Cold War. It strengthened China's position in the global surplus recycling mechanism, and it turbocharged the buildup of cloud capital both in the US and in China. To see how this caused the world to divide into two new blocks, or to be more precise, two super cloud fiefs, it helps to delve a little deeper into China's hyper-revolution in the aftermath of 2008. When the bottom fell out of Wall Street, China stabilized global capitalism by cranking up domestic investments to more than half of China's national income. It worked, in that Chinese investments took up much of the global slack caused by Western commitment to. So this business of Americans talking about China is our enemy, shut the hell up. I'm sorry. Please. Like, I use this language because I'm so frustrated with the stupidity that we have become a part of. So frustrated that we are so blinded by these criminals. The American government doesn't want China to go. China saved the American economy. 2008, China saved the American economy. The Americans went to the Chinese and built a deal with them where they said, okay, you will manufacture this much, you will have access to this much, we will have that as long as you're using the dollar. The American government itself went to the Chinese. It says in the book, the American government, even at one point, was taking the Chinese communist organization as a partner. So this nonsense of the US government telling us that China is the biggest enemy, oh, what happened when you were sitting with them so that you could benefit? Like, if we only understand this whole thing about being patriotic is nonsense. Patriotism is nonsense. When you understand the global expansion of capitalism, techno-feudalism, and control of the majority by the minority, when you understand that, you will stop worrying about whether I'm standing for America or I'm standing for what nation. And you'll start worrying about, am I standing for humanity? Am I standing for Africans? Especially you Black people is who I'm talking to, who want to call yourselves American. You will stop that. You will detach completely from that identity and start seeing yourself as a global entity when you understand the fakery of it all. So let me look at some questions. I thank you all for joining us today. I hope I served you well. I hope I gave you information that's going to be beneficial to you and to future generations. And that's going to help us get to our liberation. Let me look at the questions. Poa Maboma. How can intra-African trade be boosted on the continent so WanaUbuntu are less economically dependent on supplies, research, equipment, and products from China, US, EU, and Russia? First of all, Nduku is not the expert on these matters. Nduku is looking at these matters based on what she's reading and the fact that she has reclaimed her critical analysis skill, right? So we can all answer this question, is what I'm saying. It's not just up to me to answer this question, including Maboma. Like, we can be a part of answering this question. So now I'm going to provide some guidance based on my understanding and my knowledge and my skill level to help us answer these questions, but I invite you all to help me answer it. How can intra-African trade be boosted on the continent so WanaUbuntu are less economically dependent on supplies, research, equipment, and products? How did China do it? That's one of the things. I just gave an example of how China did it. How did China do it? Can we do that as well? So number one, we have to get rid of all, because as long as we are attached to the US defense system, let's just forget it. Hold on real quick. I have to respond to something important. Hold on real quick. This is what happens when we are lifing. Hold on. Sorry. Okay. So we have to get rid of the US bases, because as long as we are connected to their defense system, we cannot move. We cannot move. We cannot, because if we move, they will punish, and our leaders don't want that punishment, and so they have no incentive to help us move in certain ways. So the bases, if there's one thing that you all must do, Africans, in organizing, is ensuring that all the bases on our continent are shut down one way or another. Whether it's willingly, the US leaves, the UK, all the other foreign nations that are there, whether they leave willingly or not, they have to be gone. They have to. So that's one of the ways I'm seeing us answering that question. So you can come up with different ways. Let us know if you're seeing the answers differently. I'm sure I'm going to be in different spaces where I see a lot of you. Let's talk about it face to face outside the digital platforms. Let's talk about this one in those spaces where we see each other face to face and figure it out. But one definite way that we need to start organizing right now is how are we going to get rid of those bases on our motherland, because they need to go. Before, like, in order for anything else we do to be successful, they need to go. Because right now they will sabotage any plans we have. And then we need to disconnect from the digital. While we are there doing superficial activities, the true activity of liberation must be outside of those spaces. So, yeah, I hope I answered that at least. I hope I guided us to a place where we can continue to answer that sufficiently. Do you believe the US is interested in the affairs of Burkina Faso largely due to a desire to block Chinese Russia access, yeah, I see you corrected that, to resources mainly nuclear connected there? This is what I believe. The US wants to hold its hegemony. It wants to hold its control of global economics, global political affairs, global access. They want to control that. So anyone who comes in the way of that will be painted an enemy, including people who seem insignificant like me. We're not, but people who seem, based on the system, insignificant like me, including me. They will come and get us if they feel that we threaten their system enough. So their interest in the Burkina affairs is because Burkina Faso is moving in a way. Remember, they've taken out the bases, and we're saying that that's one of the main things we need to do: take out the bases. So Burkina has done that, and so the US is like, oh shit. If Yanis Varoufakis can critically analyze this whole situation and come up with that, oh, I think China succeeded because it didn't have US bases. Do you think that the United States, that has all kinds of departments and resources to do research and analysis of the threats that they face on how to get ahead of them, do you think that they did not look at China and how they got them? Because they were gotten unawares. But do you think that they didn't sit down to look at that situation and how is it that we were blind? Is it blindsided? How is it that they caught us unawares? So since then, they've done the research and they know. And so any other country they see moving in that way, they're going to try and block from getting to that because they understand that that's how that one country, blindsided. Thank you, Maria Antoinette. Hey, kizungu ni kigumu. Thank you, asante. They understand that that's how that one country who is now threatening their hegemony managed to do it. And so Burkina Faso is getting rid of those bases. And so they're a threat to the hegemony of the United States. And that's the biggest drive for the US to interfere with Burkina Faso right now. And the best way, one of the biggest ways we've seen throughout history, you don't even need to believe me, it's evidenced throughout history. They do that is through propaganda. You'll paint Thomas Sankara as a bad person who's exploiting his people. You'll paint Patrice Lumumba as a bad person who's exploiting his people. You'll paint Dedan Kimathi as a savage who is doing this and that. Like, for any white person to cry that Black people seeking liberation are killing your families, this is the Mau Mau, the Kenya Land and Freedom. I will ask you, where are those tears when Black people are being killed by your ancestors? Where are your tears when you sit and realize that your ancestors were killing our people indiscriminately? Still are. Where are your tears? When we have Black young teenagers going to jail at 13, being executed at 13, where are your tears? If you care so much about humanity, and if you are so much against savagery, because your white family was attacked by the Kenya Land and Freedom Army and slayed everyone, from the mother to the child, everyone in the house, if that makes you feel so, where is that when Black bodies are killed? When Black families, when we have Somalian children who survive in miraculous ways, witness their mothers and fathers raped and killed in front of them, burned, where is that outcry? So cut the bullshit, please, white folk, because we're not falling for it anymore. I thank you all for being with me. We've been here for 1 hour and 28 minutes. I hope I served you well. Be well, be safe, be grounded on the well-being of our people. May you have the bravery, the strength, the will to detach from what is keeping us enslaved. May we all have the bravery and the willingness to be uncomfortable to get to a better place. Asanteni, karibuni, kwaherini. And you know what? As I'm getting ready to click this, I'm actually going to go live to talk about I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to go live to give the thing that I was talking about that we all need to know about. I think I'm going to do it. Where can I do it? because I don't know if I can set up Instagram where it's going to show everywhere else. So I'm going to do it this way on StreamYard. I'm just going to go live. There's not going to be a pre-thumbnail waiting. In a few minutes, I'll take a break, quickly do a few things, and then come back and present this to you all so that you can have it, the information that I'll be sharing. Have a nice day. Kwaherini, karibuni, asanteni. Thank you all for your support and for being with us throughout our existence.